Happy Monday, Monday Tribe. Welcome to the most important hour of the week, Monday morning happy hour. It is July 6th already, which is crazy. Hope everybody had an incredible July 4th. It's personally my favorite holiday. We go to my parents have a place in Amish country, Ohio, middle of nowhere. Couldn't find it unless you know where it is type deal. And the horse and buggies, the whole thing. Got to swerve so you don't hit horse manure on the road. And we've been going there for 20 years and with some family and friends this year, being socially distant and all that, and didn't have quite the party down there, but still grateful for everything that brought, and hope you guys had a wonderful 4th of July too, and kind of puts things in perspective as, we continue to do what we do every day and with everything going on. So welcome again to Monday Morning Happy Hour, and let's jump right into it. I have one of my favorite topics of all time to talk with you guys about today, and that is the concept of Norm Westin. And many of you who probably have maybe heard me talk about this before know who Norm Westin is, but for those of you who don't, let me introduce him or her. So Norm Westin, or Norma Westin, is really like your evil twin. And what I mean by that is it's the 6 inches between your ears that is the negativity or the setback or the punch in the nads, as I've called it before, whenever everything seems to be going great or whenever you get that next breakthrough. It's that second shoe, if you've heard of that, the second shoe theory. It's that just setback, the thing that always, oh man, if I just didn't have this happen, or if I finally started my business and then pandemic started, or I would have lost the weight, but, or I wanted to be, that girl or guy, I wanted to ask him out, or I wanted to get into that school or apply for that job, but, it's the excuses that we allow ourselves to make for why we're letting something get in the way of something we're trying to accomplish. So Norm Westin, I like to think of it as your evil twin that's holding you back because you're making the excuses for whatever reason is why you're not where you want to be, why you're not accomplishing what you want to be, where you're not in your vision yet. And quick sidebar on vision. So I'll probably talk about more of this on another day, but vision, I wrote a vision when I went full time at work in 2015. I wrote a vision, and it was present day. So when I wrote it in 2015, I wrote it as if it was a stream of consciousness, present day 2020, July 4th weekend, which just happened. And there was a lot in that vision, and some of the stuff came to life, some of it didn't. And that's what was powerful too. The stuff that did come to life was equally as powerful as the stuff that did not, because everything that did not come to life in that vision, I had to face reality that it really easily could have. I brought back that emotion of when I wrote that vision and how confident I was in the things that I put in there that were going to happen. And many of them are on their way, but, thought 5 years from then, 2015, so now 2020, that those things would have happened already. And the ones that have not were some professional things or financial things or, starting different things, doing different things. But one of the main ones that did happen is I wrote in my vision that July 4th weekend, I would be driving to the lake with my then fiance, and would be getting married in the fall. So at the time, I wasn't, that was 5 years from then I was writing that. So it's 2015. I was saying, all right, July 4th weekend, I had this vision of I'm going to be driving down to the lake with my fiance, and I'm going to be getting married there that year. I mean, I really had no idea. But turns out, just driving down to the lake with Lauren this weekend, and we're getting married 10/10/2020. And that was just something that I was like, well, holy shit, this stuff actually works. Going back to the whole cheesy versus it working thing. If it works, then I'm all for it. But that was, really, really exciting to be able to realize that. But then as I looked at the rest of the vision, I'm like, all right, well, why didn't I? Let's unpack why didn't I accomplish some of the things in that vision? And Norm Westin, honestly, I think served a big part of it. And I'm still battling Norm. I don't think Norm ever goes away. We just get stronger at dealing with Norm. We learn to shrug Norm off. We learn to laugh at Norm. And so our evil twin Norm is out to get us. But realize I said us, so you're not alone. Norm comes after everybody. We all have this evil twin or triplet or whatever it is. Some might be stronger than others, but Norm is always going to be there, and you're not alone. So be being willing to talk about norm, to share norm, to not be embarrassed by norm, to let norm in to an extent, to really unpack it and look at it and decide, okay, what are these thoughts about norm? What are these things that are fear-based? What are these things that are actually real? What irrational thoughts am I having? What thoughts am I attaching to it that have nothing to do with it? Like, oh, well, yeah, norm, I can't work out anymore as hard as I used to because of my shoulder and, Division III sports, right? Like, what irrational thoughts am I attaching to norm just to make it seem like norm's a bigger deal and to make it more okay with myself? I don't like failing, just like many of you probably don't. I hate failing more than I like succeeding. And so when you have that thought process, it takes a lot to admit failure or to realize that, in that given moment, in that snapshot, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing or failing in that moment. But the moments, those failure moments are what make the story. Because ultimately, how the best stories we all know about involve enormous setbacks, and then they involve enormous comebacks, right? So I've heard it said before back at camp at BW, we went through this thing that there's a giant light shine on me on a boat. These guys on this boat, giant freighter going through here, they must know that Monday morning happy hour is going down and they're trying to get their view of it. But we heard it at camp once that the setback is the setup for the comeback. And I mean, it makes perfect sense. All the best stories that I know about, at least, involve a major setback of some kind. And when you think about it that way, not to get too deep with this right now, but how boring of a life would it be if it was just linear? Think about that for a second. How boring would life be if it was just linear? Meaning you just kind of progressed over and over and over in small steps, and it would work. It sounds like a winning formula, right? Slow and steady and being consistent. But to me, that sounds boring. And I hate being bored. Being bored is like least favorite thing to feel ever. And maybe it's the ADD, I don't know. But being bored, and it just, if that was just a linear path of life, that it wouldn't be nearly as exciting. Those linear moments are not what we're going to look back on, at least already in life. If I look back on my moments if I had to close my eyes and create a highlight reel of the first 28 years of life or what I can remember of it, none of those moments that are in my highlight reel are linear. They're all twisty, turny, dip and divey. They all launch and fall and twist. And the moments that, involve a lot of other people, most of those moments are not by myself either. So when I talk about, again, not being alone and sharing those experiences with other people, whether that be physically or verbally or just, they're going through the same things, and then thinking about, okay, what good came out of that? Some of the strongest, best moments of life come from the hardest moments of life. It's always darkest before the dawn type deal. And one of the ways I love to relate this is the penultimate step. So the penultimate step is a term used for, at least where I learned it was from track. So I was a long jump and triple jumper in high school and at BW. And I wasn't very good at BW, but scored my point or two here or there. And that's where I ultimately learned about the penultimate step. And the penultimate step is when you're running for a long jump. And if you notice, it kind of sounds like towards the end, so they're running, so it's just consistent steps, right? Like the person's sprinting. And then at the end, it sounds something like this. So it goes, and there's this short step right before the big step. So you're sprinting, you're tall, you're running, and then all of a sudden there's this real short step where your hips drop and you come down and you lock in. And then the very next step, that is where you launch chest up over into the sand, hopefully land safely, right? Like, so that penultimate step is the gather, is the breakdown, is the centering, is that moment right before you're about to launch. And another analogy I really love for this that makes all the sense in the freaking world is an arrow. And how far would an arrow go if you put an arrow into a bow and you just put it in there and then you let it go? How far would that arrow go? Not a hard question, right? Not very far. Now, if you pull the arrow back a little bit and you let it go, how far would the arrow go? A few feet. Now, if you pull the arrow back pretty far and let it go, you might be able to launch and hit a target. Now, if you take that arrow and you go, and you pull it all the way back, the furthest you can possibly pull it back, that bow's not going to break. It's designed not to break. We're designed not to break. We are literally designed not to break. I mean, I get chills just thinking about that. And you let that arrow go, that thing just flies towards its target, right? And one of the keys of that analogy is you have to be still aimed at the target. If you're pulling it back and because of that setback, you get defeated and you stop, or you get shaky, you get scared, and it still doesn't accomplish the same thing. So it's that level of focus on the target the entire time during that setback, focused on that vision, relentlessly pursuing, right? Just like kind of my mission statement. It's my mission to be contagiously happy in my pursuit to fuel and enhance the visions of others while I relentlessly fulfill my own is a responsibility that I will gratefully and joyfully execute without exception, right? Though that is my mission statement, because that pursuit, relentless pursuit of the target amongst a setback is then what allows that arrow to still be launched forward and ultimately hit the target. And so whether it be the penultimate step or the arrow being pulled back or your favorite movie when the team's down and they come back and win, whatever, but just realize that there's some level of camaraderie, togetherness, focus on the target, lack of excuses, and ultimately, number one thing is not quitting, which is, you've heard that before. It's a simple answer. But fundamentally, the only really way you truly fail is to quit. One of my favorite books is Shoe Dog, about Phil Knight and the creation of Nike. And you might think that Phil Knight, he started Nike, he's got to be some special dude or some badass dude. And, regardless of what you think about him and Nike now, you can't even go a day in your life without seeing a Nike check. Like, trying to just go out today and not see a Nike check. Well, maybe if you're quarantined at home, you might not. But even then, you probably still will. Well, actually, I'm going to do it for you. Here we go. Nike check. Boom. Now you have. So for all of you who thought you could do it, you just failed if you're watching this video, right? So Nike's everywhere. And that dude, I love that book. There's one commonality throughout that book, and it's that he did not quit. He did not quit. And the setbacks in there are ridiculous, like one thing after another. And so that's how it might feel for you. I know I felt that way. And the piece in here about expect Norm to laugh at Norm, that's what I try to do now. And it doesn't always work, but I try to at least, is whenever those stupid little things come up that you're like, man, really? Really? I was doing this. I ignored this one. I ignored that. I got through that. But now this is what's going to derail me? Just Norm trying to throw another punch. Just Norm trying to throw another punch. So when you know Norm's coming, obviously then you can be better to expect, and you expect Norm, then you can absorb Norm more easily, unpack it, spit it back out, not let it derail you. And you honestly learn to chuckle at Norm a little bit. One of my favorite examples of this is when I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, had the fortunate experience to do that with 13 other amazing people in 2016. Highly, highly recommend it. Message me if you have any questions about that. It is like the coolest trip of all time. And it's not Everest by any means. My mom was like, you're not climbing Kilimanjaro. I'm like, Mom, it's not Everest. Like 1 in 4 people die doing Everest. 1 in 4 people like don't make it to the top for Kilimanjaro. Like, it's going to be okay. But it was still tough. And one of the parts that was toughest for me was actually coming down the mountain. So we got to the top, and mentally I was locked in, I thought, the whole way. When we finally got to the top, and I was like, this is amazing. I'm so exciting. Get to the pictures. We watched the sunrise at the top of the mountain, second tallest or tallest freestanding mountain, second tallest peak in the world, something like that. And it's absolutely incredible. But then all of a sudden we had to walk down, and I'm like, man, I don't want to spend 2 more days walking down the mountain, not showering, eating this like weird porridge thing that somehow was a different flavor every day, is what we pretty much ate every day, sleeping on the ground in the tent on the rocks, not showering. I was like, no phone. I'm like, I don't want to do this for 2 more days. But so those were the Norm things, right? That were trying to derail my focus and ultimately getting down the mountain safely. Because, going down can arguably be more dangerous than going up sometimes. And Norm had a way to, make us all laugh a little bit because we all got put on our ass a few times. We had those like poles that hold us up, like, when you're walking, those hiking sticks. And inevitably going down. Sometimes you put too much weight on them, at least for me, put too much weight on it and they would collapse. One of them would collapse and you just go right on your ass. And depending on what surface you were on at the time, that maybe meant you just kind of thudded, or that meant you landed on like some sandy gravel stuff and just slid for who knows how long over the mountain wanted to have you slide. And so eventually you just learned to laugh at that because you started to expect it. And so at no point was I like, oh, I fell on my butt again. You know what? I'm just going to stay here and not go down the mountain. Right? Like, it sounds like a silly example, and it is. But whenever you're able to take something that feels more serious and scary and unpack it, and instead of relating it to like the end of the world scenario that we often do, relating it to something silly and something predictable and something meaningless in terms of why would you let it derail you from your vision, then it helps a ton. At least it did for me. Like, I started to then laugh whenever one of us would fall on our butt. We'd laugh about it because we were expecting it, and we knew that it wasn't going to impact our outcome. So our outcome was assured. We were focused on the target. We knew we were going to do, but we learned to be able to laugh at Norm because we were expecting it, and it made it more enjoyable. Made the story more enjoyable. We only get to do this thing once, and the stories we look back on and are not going to be the ones that are linear. They're going to be the ones where we get put on our ass and then still accomplish something anyway. So that unrelenting pursuit of vision is what you have to have in order to fight off Norm, because we're all going to get put on our ass, but we all have a story to tell. And sometimes getting put on our ass is a part of it. And so moving into the journal part of today. So one of the things that I want to ask you guys is, when do you expect to see Norm next in your life? And how can you prepare the next bout with Norm? How can you prepare for that? What can you do to mentally be prepared for the next bout with Norm? When do you expect to see Norm next in your life? So pause the video and think about or write down the answer for that one. The next prompt is, what was the last setback you experienced that you quickly shrugged off? How did you do so and not let that setback derail you? We all probably have examples of already having done this. So how can we capture that and figure out how we can continue to do that on a more regular basis, and not make Norm seem as scary, shrink him down? So what was the last setback you experienced that you were able to quickly shrug off? How did you do so and not let that setback derail you? That's the second prompt. Last one, and I really hope you guys are doing this. What goal in your vision could happen that much sooner if you told Norm to get lost? If you told Norm to get lost, what goal in your vision could happen that much sooner? Not wait 5 years or 10 years. It could happen, in the last 6 months of 2020, even if you wanted it to. If you wanted it badly enough, it would happen. If you wanted it badly enough, it would happen. But you got to be able to shrug off Norm. I hope you guys enjoyed this Monday morning happy hour. I will see you next week. Make today great, all right? Take care. Well, maybe you guys get a few more seconds of me because I can't figure out the video. All right. See you Monday, tribe.